to iron bombs, they call them, B-52s. And I flew B-52s. Bob got to fly F-86s and things like this when I was in college. I'm still jealous about that. But the B-52 was a very, very special plane. It's going to be flying for another 30 or 40 years. It is really a remarkable airplane. Further, it was built for nukes, and we carried lots of big nukes around in them. But then, suddenly, there were 2 bases, and then they made 4 bases shortly after that, but 2 bases were alerted to go iron bomb, they call it. What's an iron bomb? It's a regular old 750 or 1,000 pound or something like that. It's not a nuke. So they said, you guys, after we practiced a couple of missions with that, they said, you guys are going to probably go to Vietnam shortly, and next thing we knew, on February 7th, 1965, the Viet Cong attacked Pleiku and killed 28 of our Special Forces troops. Nobody likes that stuff. So they said, okay, B-52s deploy, and we deployed on February 11th out of Mather. We took off out of there with about 20 tankers and about, I think it was 15 to 18, I think it was 18 B-52s. With Barksdale right behind us, and that's, I don't know, a whole bunch of airplanes went out just north of San Francisco with looking at the Farallon Islands for a radar update because we're going to Guam. Our mission, now I can say this now, our mission was to land in Guam, about a 12-hour turnaround, load bombs and gas, take off again, go to the DMZ area where here is Tiger Island, here's the DMZ, and here's North Vietnam. We're going to descend right there to 500 feet, go up the coast of North Vietnam, turn northwest around Hai Phong, just south of Hai Phong, and go across Hanoi at about 200 feet above their houses and trees. We were at 500 feet MSL. We'd gone over there with 30 B-52s at 500 feet MSL, 200 feet above them. It would have got their attention. About a minute later, we would have popped up 1,500 feet, and we already practiced this. I wrote about it in the book, but I won't get into it. Pop up to 1,500 feet, and 1,530 large bombs would have vaporized the Phu Quyen airfield. Then we would turn around, come back, and come home to Guam. Had they not decided to have some peace, we'd have taken out another airfield. We'd have taken out a whole bunch of big targets in no time at all. Maybe 3 missions before they'd have said, wait a minute, you can destroy us in a minute. How many lives would that have saved? Millions? Even more than that. It didn't happen that way. We landed in Guam, and we went to the club. Nobody could have a beer because we're going out to fly. Then about halfway through dinner, somebody came in and said, mission's delayed, you can go have a beer. The whole dining room emptied into the bar, and we all went and had a beer and went home to bed. We got to bed, and we waited for 4.5 months, and then we went on a nothing mission to South Vietnam, just northwest of Saigon, which was a place known as the Iron Triangle. So we were known now as the Iron Dukes of the Little Triangle Patch, and I have one somewhere in a box. And we went to hit that, and that's the story of ArcLight 1. The failure of political action to take care and end wars before they get going. Well, we had the opportunity then, but 4 months later, we sat on the beaches in Guam watching all these planes come through Anderson and come through Navy Agana. And we watched them all headed out for Vietnam, and they'd come through, and we were sitting there wondering, are we going to go? Are we going to get to do this? We can end this war if you just let us. Nothing happened. They loaded up. Of course, millions of people were killed, both Americans and Cambodians and Laotians. They wiped out most of Laos. How many people here can tell me an estimate, just even an estimate of how many people were murdered, killed, starved, beaten to death, or taken to the gulag by communism during the time from 1917 till the Berlin Wall fell? Nick, you know the answer. Do you know?
I can say many millions is all I can say.
Many millions. Anybody else have a guess? Take a wild, wild guess.
50 million.
You're only about a factor of 4 to 5 short. My book, I researched chapter 3 for 4.5 months and found out that the communists had murdered at least 200 million people You look at, you know, like Stalin murdered 13 million in 1937 alone, and they were about a third of those were his own communist people. And a lot of those were his military leadership, and that's why he had problems in World War II. And that's why I think it was Khrushchev defended Stalingrad and became a premier because of that. But anyway, we're going over there to end this war before it gets going. But we sat on the beaches in Guam and waited and had fun, and the next thing you know, bang, somebody came up and said, hey, get ready. So we got ready and we looked at the mission and said, this sucks. It really did. They had planned this at SAC headquarters and didn't give us any input. We weren't allowed to, hey, I was just a first lieutenant. Had about 3 of us first lieutenants went into the bosses and said, look, you can't do this. You've got to have a timing triangle here. You don't need 5 refueling tracks 25 miles apart going down the South China Sea. You've got to have them follow your own SACTAC doctrine. Put the refueling tracks 50 miles apart. No, we got to have one for each cell, and then we come cycle through again. So we said, okay. And General Oki was the division commander in Guam, and he said, okay, guys, go out, and I want you at the ARCP, the Aero Refueling Control Point, on time. Forget the time on target. We got to be there on time. So, all right, we all took off, and if you have, let's see, you have seen these takeoffs when they go out in cells. We had 30 of us going all at once. And we were number 3. A cell of B-52s is like this. I'll try to get over here so you don't have to bend over. If my eyeballs are my plane and I'm number 3, there's lead, 2, and 3, a mile behind each, and 500 feet above. And that's the way B-52s flew throughout the Vietnam War. When they turn, you all kind of go like this, and that's the way it works. It got us in kind of a bit of trouble on the first mission because we got out middle of the night, took off, and this smoke trail down the runway, as you notice, smoke trail down the runway, and Anderson goes down, and then it comes up, and then they go out over a cliff. So everybody's rolling. Finally, it's our turn, and I'm telling you, that's the first time we had done this before in the daylight and had a practice bombing mission on a rock on the other side of Rhode Island. But this was at night, and it was a lumbering fool, and we're going bouncing down that runway. I swear those tires were going to throw their treads and everything else. And suddenly I came up to unstick. That's the call for pull back on the stick a little bit. You pull back on the stick, and the B-52 of all things takes off tail first. And away we went out over the water. Looked, and just then we got a call from lead. I lost my radar, and he turned. Well, we got our geared flaps up, and 2 turned, and they changed position. Our leader in cell 3, green cell, was the chief of staff of a very highly experienced bomber pilot. World War II experience, a couple of tours there, plus this. And I just talked to his wife, or his widow, the other day, and I was going to invite Sherry Robertson from around San Rafael to come down here for this and introduce you to her, because she's the daughter of the pilot of the other plane we hit head on. And her mother, the widow of Joe Robertson, died in that crash. And she was going to come here. I was going to invite her here today, but she couldn't make it. Her mother just died, and she was still too broken up. But you'd have met her. And Hazel lived next door to her like a grandmother all of her life. And I talked to both of them after Quita died. And Dan Tobin, Hazel Tobin, it's Robertson and Tobin. Anyway, Dan Tobin was leading, lost his radar. So they're turning out and climbing up to go to Vietnam. They changed position with number 2. No problem. Problem is later they lost a general doing that same thing, and the guy, number 2, flew right into him. Anyway, they changed positions. Now we got a new lead, number 2, Chief of Stanival here, and we were a fairly experienced crew as number 3. I talked to the wing commander, Van Parker, a lot about this afterwards, and he said, my biggest mistake in the whole thing is putting a brand new pilot in as number 2. We wanted to sandwich him in between you 2 experienced crews, and he became lead. Should have been us 2 and him 3, we wouldn't have had the problem, because we wouldn't have done a 360. We'll hear about that in a second. So, we're now being led, and it's no big problem. This is not a problem. He's experienced enough that he can lead a flight, and that's not a problem. We got over there, and we went north of the Philippines, and we're sitting there, and there's a typhoon over the South China Sea, and it is sucking us in, and we were 9 minutes early. Before aerial refueling, you always go down, all pilots do this, you go downstairs, take your nervous leak before refueling, come back up. I went down, did mine, the pilot got out, he went down, I'm strapping in, and I'm getting all set, pulled the pins out, double checked them, flying the plane, no problem, look out and lead turns. Hey, radar navigator. We talk in different language on the plane. Pilot, you'd say, pilot, co-pilot, or pilots talk together, navigators talk together downstairs. And anybody else that talks, if you're gonna call somebody else, like I say, gunner, co-pilot, oxygen check, he's supposed to answer, but my gunner was always asleep, especially at night. So the pilot got in, we're turning, and I immediately told, before the pilot was even on the interphone, I said, hey, radar, don't they know that if we meet another cell coming up the track just south of us, that the timing and distance of a 30-degree bank B-52 is a 25 mile diameter, nautical miles, diameter circle. Takes 8 minutes exactly to go around them. How is that? Halfway, 4 minutes. 25 miles, another track here, we're gonna meet them head on. I said, don't do it. Pilot got in, he was mad as hell. So we all sat there, and all we could do was just strap in and keep our eyeballs open. But we're in this turn to make our refueling time on time, because this young pilot thought this is what he's supposed to do. Hit the refueling time on time. He was told to. Nobody else did it. Tankers were there, we were there, everybody got there 9 minutes early, so just refuel and keep going. Now, that typhoon was really a wicked one. It was a killer, both in the Philippines and in Taiwan. So we're halfway, or coming around the turn like this. Apparently, I didn't know this for years, until the middle of the writing of the book.